Hello everyone, welcome back to our series on BizTalk Migrator. And now the BizTalk Migrator has been released, and we're really excited about this one because this actually is the best one we've done so far. So thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you very much for keeping interested. What we've been taking you on so far is a journey of, first of all, what the BizTalk Migrator is, and then it's kind of a bit on how it's designed, how you debug it, what it outputs, and all that sort of thing. But what we're going to do today is really, just take this one step further, because the BizTalk Migrator is it's a minimum viable product, and it's great for that. However, it is only a minimum viable product, and so it needs to be extended. It's an open source project so that you can contribute to it. And so what we're going to do today is to really do some edits to that product so that you can extend it yourselves. So really, we're really excited about this one, and we hope we hope you are too, quite frankly. So as you've no doubt been with us before, I'm Andrew Rivers. I'm Director of 345 Technology, and I'm joined by Dan Probert, who's CTO of Affinis, and an expert in all things integration on the Microsoft platform. So what we're going to cover then in today's session is we're going to go through the touch points where you need to write code. So if you want to actually get the BizTalk Migrator to do something that it doesn't do already, it's like, where do you need to touch that to write code? And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to make some changes to the product live. So hold on to your hats, because it could go spectacularly well or it could go spectacularly badly. We think it's going to go well, but it's always that thing about doing it live. Obviously, we've been through this before, so we know what the demo is going to do, but we are actually going to make the changes live. So and the whole purpose of it is allowing you to extend the tooling yourself. So what we're going to cover in the session, I mean, we've made a BizTalk application that currently won't migrate automatically, and we're going to run the migrator over it, and it will say that you can't currently migrate it automatically. And then what we want to do then is make changes in Visual Studio, rebuild the code that's running in the BizTalk Migrator, and run it again with our changes and see what happens. And if all goes well, we'll get a different result. So that's really what we are aiming for today. Now, let me just got too many windows open here, so bear with me one moment. So we are just looking at the BizTalk Migrator and what we did. So last time we went through this, so we sort of showed that, okay, you've got your BizTalk app on the left, your Azure Integration Services app on the right, and the touch points you might be involved in. Obviously, there's going to be documentation, so the user guide and what the capabilities are. You go to the AIM tool library for that. There is a library called AIM BizTalk, which has got all the rules and all the BizTalk specific things, the scenarios, all the conversion rules, and the conversion configuration, importantly. And then if you go to the AIM Azure project in GitHub, that's got the Azure templates and the deployment scripts. So those are the places that you're going to have to interact with to actually extend the tool. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through that. So this is the approach. So you need to add a rule to recognize the new adapter. So in the conversion rules, there are a number of rules. They're all named and numbered, and we'll point those out when we go through. And each one corresponds to a particular feature of BizTalk. So for example, we have rules to recognize the FTP adapter, we have rules to recognize the file adapter, and we have rules to recognize the HTTP adapter. And so if you want to add another adapter, which is what we're going to do today, you need to add a rule to recognize that new adapter and add it in. And what that rule will do is it will populate the target model. So the data that we have that represents an application in Azure, it will populate that. What you'll also need to do is you'll need to create a logic app template that represents that adapter, and you'll then need to go through the process of creating a liquid template based on that logic apps template, which is, so liquid allows you to merge data and a template and produce an output file. And then you need to update some configuration to include it, so that the migrator knows that that template is available in the conversion process. So that's the overall approach to how you extend the migrator. And what we're going to do in this session is we're going to look particularly at the SFTP adapter. So what happens if you try and convert an MSI that uses the SFTP adapter? So the SFTP adapter, as you know, is something that shipped a while ago, and it's actually a third-party adapter. So it didn't originally come with BizTalk. And so if you had BizTalk and you wanted to support SFTP, you could use this other adapter, install it, and then that would then allow you to use SFTP. And so that isn't part of the standard feature set that the BizTalk Migrator currently supports. What we're going to do now is we are going to do a demo of the conversion of this SFTP adapter. So Dan, can I hand over to you to share your desktop? And
yep, just done that. I just need to, Andrew, I just need to correct you on one little thing though. The SFTP adapter is part of BizTalk from BizTalk 2016. So Microsoft, you no longer have to use a third-party one. Most people use the in-software one. Well, most clients I know. So from 2016, it's now part of the core BizTalk product. Although you do need to install the WinSCP libraries in order to use it, which is because it uses OpenSSH under the covers.
Well, okay, I stand corrected. I thought we were demoing the old one. The old third-party one, but we're actually demoing the new one.
We're demoing the built-in one using BizTalk 2020 today.
Great. Okay, so we can now see your screen, Dan. So,
yep.
Do you want to talk us through that application?
Sure. So what we've done here is we have taken a copy of the FTP pass-through scenario that came with the tool, and we've created an SFTP one, and just put an S in front of everything pretty much. So like the FTP one, it's very simple. We have a single receive port. I'm sorry for the sizing. I haven't made this bigger. I can't. It's quite difficult to make this bit of text here bigger in the console. But we've got a single receive location using the SFTP adapter, and then a single send port using the SFTP adapter. Now we've populated the bindings for this adapter. If I try and open that up in here, so we've got a number of different properties going on in here. If you haven't used the SFTP adapter before, it's similar to the FTP adapter. It's just authentication can be a little bit different. So one of the properties we have in here that you can hardly read is client authentication mode, and your options here are password, public key authentication, or multi-factor authentication. Password means that it works just like FTP. You supply a username and password and off you go. Public key authentication is something that FTP generally doesn't do, and that's where we have a private key. The public key is on the public key portion of the private public key pair is installed on the SFTP server, and we're holding the private key here. So what we do is we tell BizTalk the location of that private key, and we give the password to that private key as well. And we indicate what type of authentication we're using with this property here. This is really important because when we come to look at what AIS does, AIS treats this slightly differently. So that's what we've got in this application. So it's very, very simple. It's using the pass-through receive pipeline. It receives a file and then sends it. And we can even show this working by starting the application. And then we will go to the folder where we send and receive from, which is this one.
So doing the classic BizTalk demo.
The classic
Right.
BizTalk demo, yes.
You drop a file into a folder and it disappears.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, wow.
Woo. Yeah. So I'm just going to come in, I'm going to edit this file. Because again, this is another thing too, which if you haven't worked with these adapters before, that they can run in two ways. The original way that the FTP and file adapters worked is when they picked up a file, they consumed it. They deleted the file from disk. The FTP adapter and the SFTP adapter also work on date changes. So it doesn't delete the original file, but it keeps a record of the last time it ran, so that it's looking for any files that have changed since it last ran, which means that it pick up the same file again if it's changed. So if I come in here and I change this to test2 and then I save it, that will change the date time on the file, the modified date time. And if I go to inbound, I'll see, oh, there we go, that's just arrived. So that's this very, very simple scenario working. Pick up a file and dump it out another side. All right, that's what we have. So now we have this working scenario. What we can do is I can stop it so that it's not continually polling the SFTP server. And we can export this. So if you've used the tool already, you'll be familiar with this. This is what the tool takes as input. We'll export this as an MSI file. And we will stick it here. Like that, and export, and it says it's already there, and do we want to override it? And now it'll export it, and now we have an MSI file. So Andrew, what would we do next normally?
So the next thing we would normally do is we'd use the MSI as the input for our BizTalk Migrator. So we would run, so obviously, as you know from the previous episodes, we've installed the BizTalk Migrator from Chocolatey. We've got some command lines that we are able to run it, and as long as we know, as long as we've got the path of that MSI we've just exported, we can run the BizTalk Explorer using the aim command.
Right.
And we'll run an assessment on it to get a report out.
Yep, so let's do that. We'll fire up Windows Terminal and we'll run the tool over it. The tool is executed. So should we go and look at the report that it's generated? So that will be in the output folder. Here it is here. And again, we've got a number of different HTML files in here, haven't we?
Yep. So we have the overarching report, then that calls out to different files for the different applications.
Cool. All right. So if we open up the main report here, so what do we want to go and look for here, Andrew?
So the main thing is, I suppose, because what we're looking at the start is we're looking at our source application. So let's have a look at our source application, see what that says. See that it's picked up recognized that the adapter's in there. I think that'll be the first place we look. So we look at the receive location and verify that that's the SFTP.
Yep.
And then if we go back to the sort of the home of the report, what we want to do now is we want to look for the output application. So right at the bottom, we've got a link to look at the output application. So the system application is always the same, as you know. That's all the artifacts that replace the BizTalk engine. But we want to look at the AIM SFTP pass-through application and see what we've got in there. So as you can see in there, so we've got a little plug socket, and we can see that the plug socket's only got 2 stars against it. And 2 stars isn't a very good rating. So if we expand that, let's have a look at what that says in terms of the support. Okay, so it's given us some properties on that. Do you want to? I can't actually read those on my screen. You might have to go through those a bit then.
Okay, I've zoomed in a little bit, but what we've got here is just the generic properties. So basically, the tool doesn't recognize the SFTP adapter. It recognizes that we have an adapter, and it's pulled out some of the properties. It recognizes, the port and the location name, so the receive port name and the receive port ID and the transport type and its location, because those are all generic to all adapters. But down here, it says there's no Azure resources associated with it, so it can't output anything. So if we did a conversion with this, we wouldn't get an endpoint for the receiver location. It just wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't know how to process it.
Yeah, and the 2 stars. I mean, if we look at the stars come from. I think we might mention this last time. There's an enumeration called conversion rating that effectively is where the stars come from, and 2 represents no automatic conversion. So if it was 1 star, that would mean that it was not supported at all.
Okay.
2 represents no automatic conversion. In other words, there is support for that, but it's not automatic in the tool. So that you can build an application with that feature, but the tool won't do it automatically.
And that kind of makes sense because it recognizes that it's a receiver location, which is supported, but just that the adapter is not supported. Whereas if it was something that if it was another feature in BizTalk like the BRE that's not supported at all, you'd expect that to get 1 star because it doesn't recognize it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, so now that proves that it doesn't work. So
yay.
And we're done. No. Let's go back to the slides here. So what we're going to cover today is how to modify the code to add recognition of the SFTP adapter. Originally, when we were planning this webinar, we thought we'd go all the way through end to end, but realized that's going to take a lot more than the time we've got today. And we'd be rushing through it so quickly that you'd have to watch this on half speed to capture all the information we'd be throwing at you. So we thought we'd slow down a bit, and today we're going to do the definitely the rules required to understand it. So that will update the report, and you'll see that. And then we'll talk about what else needs to be done, and we'll see how much time we have left. But before we get going, something that's really important, Andrew, just to make sure that everyone understands is if you're going to be making changes to the tool, regardless as to whether or not you're going to want to commit them into the actual open source repo, or whether you just want to create your own version of the tool that you can run for your own clients or at home, you're going to want to create a new fork. So if you open up the GitHub repo for any one of these, so in this case here, this is the Azure AIM tool, which is the main repo, you can click the fork button, and as long as you're signed in, I should say you need your own GitHub account, obviously, it will fork the repo into your account. So you'll have a copy of AIM tool in your account, and you'll want to do that for the 4, well, you could do it with all 5 repos, but you definitely want to do it for AIM tool, AIM core, AIM BizTalk, and AIM Azure. You also need a model eventually as well, but for right now, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and that's because you can't actually directly push changes into the open source repo. So if you fork it, you get your own copy that you can do whatever you want with.
Yeah.
And then and that allows you to then, if you've got some changes you want to send back, you can pull request those back to the original repo, but you can't push directly to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a couple of little steps here. I mean, they're from the GitHub documentation on forking a repo, but you can do all this via the command line. The other thing I'm making an assumption, I should say, is that if you're a BizTalk developer and you're watching this and you haven't done any other development really than .NET, you're probably not all that familiar with GitHub and Git and Visual Studio Code and all the rest. I don't know, maybe that's an assumption, but we're just trying to make sure that if this is new to you, there's a bit of information here for you. But what you need to do is from the command line, you can change directory to your parent folder. So for example, C source, and then, I would be Probit Daniel because that's my name of my GitHub account. But, Andrew would be 345 Andrew, whatever it is, wherever you want to be storing your GitHub repos. Then you clone the repo. So it's a git clone and then the URL. And you get that from opening up the repo, and there's an icon for code, and there's a link in that. It's all described in this document. Once you've done that, you need to add an upstream link, because the way it works is, although you've got your forked repo, the actual original repo is still the Microsoft one, which is GitHub/Azure/ whatever the repo name is. And if you add an upstream link, then you can keep your fork in sync with the upstream one. Because if you imagine, if you've got your own fork and you're doing development on it, and then some bug fixes get pushed into the main, public open source repo, you're going to want to get those and merge them into your fork. So you add a remote link back to the actual Azure repo, and then you go git fetch upstream, and that will pull everything in from there into your fork. So it's all inside this document here, this link here. So once you've got those, what you need to do is you need to open up the AIM tool and AIM BizTalk solutions and build them, and you can open those up in Visual Studio. So if we, I was going to show you that, but I will show you that after when we move on to the next demo.
Because one of the things I was just going to very quickly say, Dan, is that the Visual Studio support for GitHub is actually pretty good now. So most of that, so a lot of what you need to do with Git, if you're not familiar with it, actually the tooling in Visual Studio is quite good. So you don't just have to go straight bare metal Git. You can
the command line.
On the command line, it is actually built into Visual Studio now.
Cool. You can tell I do a lot of stuff in Visual Studio Code where I have to do it on the command line. So, I like doing it on the command line. So, anyway, so you'd build, and we'll show you these in a minute. But I don't know if you remember. I think it was last week, Andrew, where you showed how to debug into the tool.
Yep.
Yep. So that's one thing you have to do. And in order to do that, you need a copy of the tool running locally. Ideally, you don't want to use the one that's come from Chocolatey. You want to run the aim.exe from the aim tool folder or the aim tool repo. So you want to build that and then point to that. And I'll show you that as well. And the reason for that, if you use the one in Chocolatey, it's going to start loading in everything that's in, that got downloaded with Chocolatey rather than your own. It'll use some of your stage runners, but it'll still go to Chocolatey for everything else. Alrighty. The basic steps for adding a new rule, especially a new rule for a new adapter, are these. First of all, we want to work out what the properties are for the connector in AIS. So if you think about the fact that we're, in this example, we're using the SFTP adapter, there's an SFTP connector in Logic Apps, and that has a certain number of properties on it. So we need to know what those properties are, and we need to compare them to what BizTalk has as well, because we've got to do a mapping between the two. So to get the Logic Apps connector properties, the way I tend to do it still is a GET request to get the definition file. So this is the Azure command line here, Azure CLI, and we're doing a request here to the management API using your current subscription ID and a region. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't. The subscription ID and the region is just so it knows what version to try and get, because if you're in a region that supports, preview versions, that sort of thing, but it doesn't really matter what you put in for these. And then the API name. So for SFTP, that's SFTP. For FTP, it's FTP. For file, it's file system. If you want all the connectors, you can just leave this out. There are other ways of getting this. This is just the way I tend to do it. And then the other thing you'll want to do is create a Logic app and add in the connector, because there'll be some additional properties for the connector that are in the Logic app. So there's two places you'll find these properties. One is in the API connection, and one is in the actual Logic app. So if I show you getting the API connection here, if we switch out of this temporarily, what I'm going to do is I've got that command set up here. So in this case here, I'm going to get the SFTP adapter, and I will come out to my, oh no, that's the wrong one, that one here. And I'm going to attempt to get the SFTP adapter. So I'll execute this. Oh, no, I have forgotten. All right, AZ REST -U, that would help. Let's try this. And it'll go away, and hopefully in a minute. There we go. So that's not much use to us. We actually want to store that in a file. So what we can do is we can pipe that to temp SFTP API connection template.json. Okay, that's just telling me I need to do an AZ login first. Alrighty, and then I can run that. You can see the error. There's actually an error here. There's a bug in the Azure CLI here that when it changes color, it doesn't change back again. And you sometimes see that in the tool as well.
Yeah, isn't that actually a bug in PowerShell? I've got a feeling this.
Yes, I think you're right.
Actually a bug in PowerShell.
Yeah, it doesn't change the color back for some reason. Anyway, so now I've got it. I've stuck it in a file here. If I go to the temp folder, I will find it. Oh, no, I've got lots of them. It failed getting the first one, so let's just go to this one. So I know this one works. Oh, this has got 2 of them in it. That's why it's double the size, because I ran it twice with a pipe. All right. So this here is the API connection template. So if you are in a Logic app and you say, I want to add a new SFTP connector. In fact, let's give an example. Let's do this live. We go out to Logic apps and I say I want to add a new Logic app, and oh, it doesn't really matter where I stick it. I'll stick it over here and I'll call it SFTP test and create it. And we give it a second to create. All right, it's created. And I want to start with a blank Logic app because I want to add in the SFTP connector myself. So if I search for SFTP, now you'll see there's 2 versions of this. The one we want is the SSH one, which is the newer one. The SSH one uses OpenSSH, which is what BizTalk uses. We want to do that, and we'll say, well, it doesn't really matter what we choose, but we'll choose when files are added or modified properties only. And this trigger means that when it finds a file, it just tells us and gives us the properties of the file, but doesn't load the file in yet. And that's what the Logic apps output by the tool use, because they get the name of the file and then check if it matches the file mask. I'll explain that in a second. So we choose that, and what it's doing now is this is where it actually creates the API connection for us. I don't have an API connection of type SFTP in this resource group. So the designer is saying, well, we have to create one for you. So what's the name of the API connection? Then the rest of these properties here are the properties for the API connection. Yeah, they're stored in a separate Azure resource from the Logic app. So what's the server address, the username, the password if you're using it, the SSH private key and the private key password. You can only supply the password or the private key. You can't provide both. The port number, normally 22, whether or not we are going to validate the host key, and then the host key fingerprints that are acceptable, and then the root folder path. So these are all properties for the API connection. And we can see that because if we come back out here, what we'll find in this template, this definition that we retrieved from Azure is what is used to build that dialog you just saw. So in here, if we come down to connection parameters, there's disable resume capability, and you'll see right in here, there's a description, disable resume capability, true or false, specify if it should be put on, or give up security and accept any SSH host key. So disable SSH host key validation. If we were to go back to the Logic app, you'll see it's right here. Yeah, so this is what is used to generate this dialog here in the background. So when we're building the API connection, what we need to do is take each of these things, and these are the names of the parameters the API connection need. So when we're building an API connection template, ARM template, this is what we'll want. But the first thing we want to do is we want to pull all of these out and put them into a list, because these are the AIS parameters. These are the ones that AIS is going to need. So we have to find in BizTalk where to find values for these. So we pull all these out. Okay, and you'll see they go down here. So private key passphrase, things like that. All right, all the way down. And then once you've got all those, there's a couple of other ones you're going to need as well. If we go back to the Logic app here, and I just go, test SFTP, and I hoping this doesn't attempt to connect, because this is all going to be gibberish. And I'm going to use a password, so and port number, and disable that, and we'll set a slash for that, and we go create. Hopefully it'll just create it. Yep, cool. So that's created an API connection for me. I've just got a separate resource now in the same resource group that's been created for me. And now I'm left with the generic ones for the file system. So the SFTP connector. So the SFTP connector also needs to know what's the folder I'm looking for files in, how many files am I picking up at a time, and then how often is it polling. This is a polling trigger. So by default, it's doing it every 3 minutes. The other parameters in here are just generic parameters. You know, you can set what time it starts polling every day if you want, and the time zone it uses. And you can see here it's connected to this API connection I put. So this gives you the total list of parameters we're going to need to put into our rule. So we need
we go through the same process for, you know, any other type of connector that we wanted to use. We go through that same process. You know, in this example, we'll use an SFTP, but it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. If I wanted to do DB2 or SQL or any other supported connector, as long as there is a Logix Apps connector for it, then it's relatively trivial to migrate across. If there's no equivalent connector, so the WCF connectors, WCF basic HTTP, which is a SOAP connector effectively, there's no equivalent for that, so you wouldn't be able to do this the same way. You could create a custom connector though, which is an interesting idea. We won't talk about now, but you could do that. But then custom connectors are only applicable to you, so you wouldn't be able to add them into the core Logic Apps or anything like that. Your picture's live, Andrew, by the way. So moving right along, I'm making a note of all these parameters for a reason, because what we're going to do is we are going to look at what's in the binding file and build a list to compare. So I've done this already, actually, so we don't have to do this as we go. All right, so the next thing we want to know is what are the parameters in the BizTalk binding file? And we can find those because in the output here, where we just ran the tool a moment ago, there's an unpack folder, and there's lots in here because when I ran the tool, I've specified a special command line so all the unpacks go in the same folder. But if I find the most recent one, what it's done is it's unpacked the MSI into this folder, and if I come in here, I'll find a binding file. Now remember, this is a very simple application that only has a receive location and a send port, so there's no assemblies in it or anything. It's just got a binding file, that's it. And in here I'll find the binding file. Here it is here. You've got to go quite deep to find it. So there's the binding file for our SFTP application. So can you read that, Andrew? Is that big enough?
I can't actually read the text, but I kind of, funny enough, I've seen so many binding files. I could almost find my way around it.
Okay.
So yeah, so there we go. Module refs. Obviously,
Yep.
that's where your typically your orchestrations go in there. And obviously we haven't really got any. And then we've got a send port collection, and with a single send port in it, and then our receive port collection.
Yep.
With a single receive port, and then nested within that receive port is a receive location.
That's exactly right. So here's our receive location with the address. And what we're interested in is this transport type data. So when you are in BizTalk, if we switch back to BizTalk here and you go to receive location, when you click configure here, all the information that's inside there is stored here, just on this one line. And there's one node here called, or element called transport type data. And it's in an HTML encoded form. Everything else you see here are the properties that are stored outside of there, so under schedule and up here, and also at the receive port level as well. But in here, the properties specific to this adapter are stored on that one line. So in here, what we have to do is we have to select this line and then run an HTML decode. Now, I'm going to cheat in this case here because there is a plugin that does this for you. I don't even know if I've got it on here, URL decode. Actually, this might work. It's an HTML decode. I can't remember. Do you know what? Let's do this live. I haven't tried this before. URL decode. No, it didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to cheat. and I'm going to go ampersand greater than is going to be replaced with greater than, and ampersand less than gets replaced with less than.
Yeah, that's what I normally do.
Yeah. It's tricky. The FTP one's slightly different. I don't know why. Every adapter has a slightly different format for how they store things. And then I've got the XML tools plugin for Notepad++, so I can just go pretty print, and there we go. Why not make this look like XML? There we go. Look at that. So those are all the properties we got when we push the configure button. A couple of important things to note here is that not every property is shown here. These are obviously up to whoever wrote the adapter, which is generally Microsoft. But if you don't specify a value, if I come back into here and you look at some of these are blank, if they're blank, they sometimes don't appear in the binding file. And that's important for certain fields. Like, for example, I kind of want the SSH server host key fingerprint to appear, and it's not there because I didn't give it a value. So I can give it a value temporarily, and then I can just come up here and I can export the binding file. And we'll stick that in. Yeah. Alrighty. And then what I can do is I can come back to where I was, to temp, and now I've got a binding file. And this is the same binding file, but now it's got, should have an extra property in here. So if I do the same thing I just did a minute ago. Cool. Excellent. Okay. So I've got 22 lines in this one and 22 in that one. Oh, it's exactly the same. All right. So I did get it. It's right there. There was one. I did this earlier, and there was one property missing because I didn't set a value. I can't remember what it was. So that one's actually worked. So now we've got a list of the connection of the properties that BizTalk has. So when the tool runs, these are the properties that it will have. And what we've got to do is work out the mapping between these and the AIS ones. So what I've done is I've helpfully put them into a spreadsheet here. So here are the BizTalk ones, and here are the AIS ones. And you can see there are gaps. And there are gaps because these ones here all have a mapping. So server address, port, server port, username. So these ones here you can work out. In BizTalk, polling interval unit is what's called frequency in a logic app. Polling interval is what's called recurrence in a logic app. The access any SSH server host key they've renamed to give up security and accept any, which I think is quite interesting. It's give up security. I'm actually in that SFTP API connection, just as a short aside, I'm a little bit curious about that because when I got it about 2 weeks ago, we didn't have this property, and this was just called accept any SSH host key. And I noticed that in a logic app, it's not using the latest version because this property here doesn't exist. Disable upload files resume capability. So I assume this is something that the logic apps team are working on and haven't yet made available.
But it's in the schema now.
But it's already in the schema, yeah. Because I won't go through this, but the SFTP adapter supports when you're sending files to resume them. So if something happened halfway through or the file was too big, it can resume sending them. So this is something about turning that on and off. So some of these are quite easy to map. These ones here that are defined in BizTalk, there's no equivalent for. Client authentication mode is that property we saw that can be set to password, public key authentication, and multi-factor authentication. In Azure, the SFTP connector, when you go and look at the documents, only supports password or public key authentication. It doesn't support multi-factor. And the way you control it is you either set the password value or you set the private key file name, but not both. In AIS, if you set both, it will you get an error at runtime. So whereas BizTalk allows you to set both because it doesn't use that to decide, it uses this property here. So this means when we come to write our rule, we're going to want to look at this property and from that decide if we're going to set the password or the private key setting. Connection limit isn't supported. That's how many multiple connections BizTalk can make. You have no control over that. The redownload interval doesn't have an equivalent. The encryption cipher is an interesting one. We can't control that with the AIS connector. Time comparison. So the time comparison and retain after download work together to decide, are we going to delete the file once we've read it, or are we just going to check to see if it's changed since we last ran? The Logic App's SFTP connector only does time comparison. You cannot delete the file, it's not supported. Having said that, you could do it. What you could do is implement in the Logic App something that goes, if this property of retain after download is false, coming from BizTalk, you could then just delete the file once you've read it in. It's just that it's not supported by the connector. You'd have to build it into the Logic App. And then we don't have a reuse time and proxies. There's no proxies at all. All right. So now we've got this list here. This is the minimum we need to now start writing a rule. So if I switch back to the slides.
So while you're doing that, I'll just sort of say that the reason why this is so significant is that obviously what we're doing is we're reading stuff out of the binding file, and somewhere in our rule we need to build up the destination. So we need to map those things. So that so effectively what we're doing there is where we've done that bit of analysis so that we can do a mapping from BizTalk to the BizTalk SFTP adapter to the Logic App's SFTP adapter, and that's you know, similarly to like you do in any other integration project, you'd write a bit of a spec for it and say what field maps onto what. That's exactly what we've just done there.
Yep, working all that out. And we're lucky that with the sort of file-based adapters, you know, FTP, SFTP, and the file system one, they're all pretty similar. So the properties are fairly similar. You're picking up a file, you have a file mask, things like that. So they're well known. But if you were, say, doing the SAP adapter, the WCF SAP adapter to the Logic App SAP adapter, what if they've got completely different parameters? So your rule then becomes more complex because you're still going to try and convert them over, but you might find there's very few that in BizTalk you can add into AIS. So it would have to be, you know, the tool would do what it could, and then you'd have to manually add those in and make sure the report reflected it. All right, so we've got the BizTalk adapter properties now, and we've created a list comparing them. And what we want to do now is find an existing rule and copy it, and then update it. And that's what we're going to do now. Luckily, we chose the SFTP adapter for a very good reason, which is that it's similar enough to the FTP adapter that we can just copy it. So I'm going to open up a particular solution here. I might just quickly show you something, which is I have synced everything down to in here. So these are my 4 repos plus another repo I'm working on. Excuse me. And the first thing I would do is go to the tool repo, and there's a solution in here, the tool solution, and I would open that and I would build it. You might have to do a NuGet restore as well if that doesn't happen automatically to get all the packages it depends on. And then this is the version of aim.exe I would be executing. If you were to go to the source folder and go to bin, you'll find there is an aim.exe folder in there. Okay, it's a .NET Core app, and this is the one you want to run. So when you're running the tool and going into debug mode, for example, or testing your code, this is the executable you want to run. If you just type in aim.exe or aim in a command prompt, you'll be running the Choco version, which is not the one you want to run. Alrighty.
Yeah, because that's just it's the whole precedence of where it's looking for paths. So yeah, obviously, if you look reference and executable, look in the current path, and then it'll look in all the reference paths. And so if you go to that folder from, you know, if you navigate to that folder with your command prompt, then you know that you're definitely running the executable in that folder.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so the project I've got open in the background here is in the AIM BizTalk repo, and it's this one here, Microsoft.Azure Integration Migration.BizTalk. And this is where all the rules are stored. So we open that one up, and that's what I've got here. And the first thing you want to do is build it and restore NuGet packages if you need to. You want this to build successfully and not have any problems with dependencies. And once you've done that, you can now actually run the tool. And in fact, when we ran the tool earlier to show what the tool does when it hasn't got SFTP support, we were running this code. I wasn't running it from Choco. In fact, I completely uninstalled the Choco version from my system. And last week, Andrew had some example command lines to run, but here it is here. It's aim and then debug mode. If you do this, it will pause, asking you to connect to the process from Visual Studio. We're doing an assess because all we want to do is test the reporting. And then there's a number of different parameters we put in here. So the stage runners we want to load in, where the stage runners are, what folder we're looking for. And this is really important because we're saying we're going to use them from our repo. Then the MSI we're importing. And then we're also going to use a separate folder for unpacking and a separate folder for our output. And then where are the Azure templates we want to use? And then again, we're using dev deployment and unique deployment ID. Obviously, we're not deploying any of this. This is just for testing, so we don't need all the parameters. Now, that aim, if I was to run that from the command line, I'd be running my Choco version because I haven't given a path. So what I do need to do is up here, you can see I've got the actual path. So I need to supply the path to this here. So in my case here, I've got them in projects, Probit Daniel, aim tool, source, and then all the way through to the aim.exe I saw earlier. And that allows me to run it. Now, if I take out the debug here, it will just run the tool as normal. And that's what we did earlier. When we generated that report showing that SFTP wasn't supported, this is what we ran. Alrighty. So we've built this tool now. The build is successful. Let's get into this and actually add in a new rule. Now, we're going to cheat quite a lot here because the rule that we are creating, SFTP, is very similar to the FTP. It's got similar properties and everything. So what we're going to do is cheat and do copy and paste. So I am going to take a copy of this rule. I'm going to rename it 4.
Yeah, because we can see there that you've got the RP rules, are receive port rules.
Yeah.
And then obviously they're sequenced with a number, and then we've got the a name of it that represents actually what it is we're trying to build. I
would guess, Andrew, if I wanted to write a set of rules that I didn't want to contribute because maybe they're using a custom adapter that I wrote, that I could put these in a separate assembly, a separate stage runner assembly of my own. Yeah.
Yeah. So when the BizTalk Migrator runs, it's looking in all the assemblies that you pointed at and looking for implementations of particular interfaces. So yes, you could actually create another assembly that referenced this solution maybe, and so you could take advantage of all the base classes in it, and then you could then you could literally write your own stage runner. The only thing is, and maybe this is a little bit too much detail for the moment, but the way that the BizTalk Migrator runs in this solution, you get a stage runner, and all the different stage runner classes run together. But we've got one class that runs all the conversion rules.
It's got everything in one assembly.
So that's so it may be easier for you to just to have your own local, have your own version of this assembly. Mm-hmm. And to add the rules because okay. Effectively we run them in a sequence.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. All right, so I'm just going to start doing some find and replace in here. So I'm going to replace the name here. I'm going to change the rule name to 4, and I'm going to go through here. If we come down into here, we'll find the way that this works. This is the first sort of the entry method, if you like, for a rule. What it's doing down in here is that it's built a model from the binding file, so it's going to loop through all the applications in the binding file and then through all the receive ports, and then it's going to go through all the receive locations, and it's going to look for a receive location where the transport type is FTP. In this case here, this is now SFTP. So I am going to do a replace of, and I'm just going to do this across the entire file, by the way. There we go. So now we're looking for SFTP, and I will also do that with lowercase. No, like that, and then also I'll do where we've got FTP like this. Alrighty, so that's done. So now it's going to look for ones where we've got FTP. So right now, if you ran this, it would kind of work. It would find, if you were to bug into this, it would find all that information, but the mapping would fail. So we don't have to worry too much about what's going down inside here, other than we are looking for this method here. So what this is doing here is it's mapping the properties. So we're going to be doing that. I think what I'll fix up first, though, is that it's using a number of resources here. So everything is split out into all the messages output by the tool are localized, so they could be replaced with other languages. So in this case here, I'm going to start putting out some other resources. So what we'll do is we'll go to the resources here and go to analysis resources. This has got the link to the help. So I'm going to copy this one and put that in here. Rename it to SFTP, and then this happens to go to that URL. So that's done. And then error messages, we're going to look for the SFTP ones. I don't think there are any in here. Nope. Information messages, there's definitely a few in here. So we've got 2 FTP ones, so we'll copy those. Oh, no, copy the row, and we'll paste in. No. Try that again. And we'll rename that.
So really, while you're doing that, Dan, I'll just add a bit of commentary here. That the whole point of this is that there's that there are patterns that are already established, and so as long as you understand and follow the pattern that's already there, then you can get a long way towards doing this in a very, very short space of time, and that's really what we're doing here.
Yes, imagine having to write all this, from scratch.
That'd take months.
My what is it? My little trigger's going on here by FTP. That's not all capitals. I'm being triggered by it.
Oh, that whole naming convention kind of, or linting rule, or whatever it is.
Obviously, I'm making an assumption here that all the messages that are applicable to the FTP adapter are also applicable. I haven't checked. I should really go make sure these are all being used, but I assume that this is going to be the case. And have we got any warning messages for SFTP? Nope. Alrighty.
Yeah. So again, this is just pointing out this is live. So obviously, we'd be taking a lot more care and going through this in a lot more detail. For the real thing.
For the real thing. Alrighty. Now we're at the main method here, map adapter properties. So in here, it's building a dictionary of BizTalk properties versus AIS properties. So this is the name of the property in the BizTalk binding file, and this is the name of the property that we're going to use in AIS. Interesting note: these names here don't actually have to match what's in the API connection template. It's whatever you're using in the template you create, but it's easier if you have some sort of standard. One thing you'll notice is that in the FTP binding file, in the FTP adapter, and the binding file for the FTP adapter, it's camel case using lower. What do they call it? It's not dromedary when it's the first character is lowercase, whereas the SFTP one is using proper case where it's capitalized at the beginning. So it looks like the SFTP adapter was written many years after the FTP adapter by the BizTalk team, and they just changed how they output it. I don't know why, but they did. All right, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to grab one. I grabbed a section here that I wrote earlier. If I can find it, here it is here. This here, I have built from that spreadsheet I showed you earlier here. So I'm basically using these values here where there is an equivalent. I have also added in client authentication mode for a reason. So client authentication mode, I'm going to read in from the binding file and stick in a thing here called client authentication mode, even though I'm not using it. And the reason for that will become obvious further down. So now these are the properties we're reading in. Now, if you remember, if you run the report over, say, FTP, it will give you a warning for all adapter properties that are in the binding file but aren't supported by the tool. And the way it does that is, if they're not in this dictionary, then it will output that warning. So only the ones in here will be listed as ones that are supported. So what it's going to do now is it's going to try and match the going through here. And another thing it does there is the convert adapter property, which is quite important in our case. And I'll show you why. And this is a trick for new players. If we come down and have a look here at these properties, one of the ones we are selecting is, where is it? Yeah, access any, this one here. And you'll see that BizTalk helpfully uses a value of -1 for true. I know of no other system that uses -1 to indicate true, but BizTalk does. So we have to convert that because we've got no way in .NET of automatically converting -1. I mean, yes, you could do an absolute and then convert that to a Boolean, but it's easier to just read that in and convert that to true or false. So that's one thing we have to do. So we do that by coming down to convert adapter property, which is down here, and these are the ones supported for FTP, and we don't care about those. Instead, what we want is we want to find the this property here. And we want to say that if that value is -1, then we want to use true or false. Now, I have found an issue with the report where I have to store those, unfortunately, as strings for now. I won't talk about why that is. I might just raise a bug on the report. Let's just fix this up a little bit. Alrighty, so now we're doing that correctly. I'm going to show you something because I'm now going to build this and I'm going to run it and it's going to blow up. I'm going to show you blow up. But I could run this.
It's not going to run quite yet, is it? Because we haven't actually added it into
I know that's
into
true.
the dependency container.
Good point. Maybe I should do that first, Andrew. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've built this one. Okay, so we've done the rule. Now we have to tell the tool about the rule.
Yeah. So the rule's just a class that's floating around.
Yeah.
In the solution, but we now need to wire it in.
Yeah. So there's two places. We want to come to the conversion rules analyzer and here. By the way, one way of searching for this is if I just do a search for this across the entire solution, then we can find out where it's used. So there's the conversion rule to begin with, but you can see it's also referenced in the conversion rules analyzer and the dependency container, and there's a whole lot of tests. But these two here are places where I'll need to add in my new RP003 or RP004 rule as well. So in here, I can see there's a list of containers that I have to run. So I want to add in my new rule here. And then additionally, in the dependency container here, I want to add in a reference to my new one as well. I think that's all I need to do.
Yeah, so it's sort of classic dependency injection that where in one of those is initiating all the available objects that can be injected, and the other one is just saying, right, I want that object now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's hide this. So I've just built that. So if I was to go and run this, what I could actually do is I could come to the tool here, to my thing here, and I could set a breakpoint here, for example. Alrighty, and I could then select the correct command line here to run it in debug mode. And I could come back out to here. Now, let's just clear this. So if I run this in debug mode, what it'll do, if you remember this from last week, it will attach my debugger to 4124. I go debug, attach the process. Wait a second. Wait another second. Sometimes this breaks, by the way. There we go. Oh, I didn't start Visual Studio in admin mode. How about I go and do that?
That's funny, really, because last week I'm sure I didn't start it in admin mode, but it still let me debug into it.
No, it is? Okay. I don't know how long it'll wait to allow me to do this, but I suspect it's probably timed out. And it just, by the way, it just runs the tool when it times out. Oh, come on. All right, let's try this again. Oh, debug move. The menu item moved. Come on, attach the process. It's probably not going to be there anymore. No, there it is. And it's starting up, and you can see the tool's now running. Oh, let's go to my, look, there's my SFTP adapter with 2 S's in it. How did I manage that one? Anyway, we'll go back and fix that in a minute. Alrighty, it has hit a null reference exception, and it's hit that inside my map transport data in here, which is interesting. So, and I was expecting that. So it's inside map transport type data. It's had a null reference exception here because this thing here is node, and node is selecting it from the custom properties, and it's trying to select this. And that is because Microsoft, or the BizTalk product group, and all their wisdom have decided that the SFTP connector, the adapter, doesn't follow the same pattern as the FTP adapter. So what they've done is, if we come back out and look at the custom properties here, custom properties, and then we've got a whole lot of things. But if you were to look at the FTP adapter one, which I had somewhere else. Oh, I haven't got it here. Oh, this is the FTP. The FTP adapter goes custom props, adapter config, then config. And I don't know why they're different, but they are. But to select that node, we just need to select custom props. So we need to come back to our code here. We'll just exit out of this one. And we just need to change it to that. Alrighty, that's it. So now we can build that again. Cool. And what I'm going to do now, Andrew, is I'm just going to actually run it without attaching a debugger. Because I want to see if it will just generate the report or whether it will come out with an error. So let's try again. So it's running. Oh, we've got an error again.
Oh, we've got a little error there.
Yeah, okay, so let's go and have a look and see what that error is. I'm going to, again, run this in debug mode. So we'll just go back up to the previous one. Here, we will attach the debugger.
Did we see what the error was last time?
Yeah, it didn't select this node here. It was null. So let's see what happens here. So we've got a object reference. Oh, error again. Map transport type data. It's in the same line. Okay. It hasn't picked up the. I don't know what I did there. When I rebuilt it, it hasn't picked up the changes. Oh, okay. Alrighty. So what's going on here is I'm in the wrong repo. So let's go and come on. I want you to rebuild. I've suddenly realized I looked at the folder and I'm not in my folder. I'm in the main Azure repo, which I really don't want to be in. I'm in a different fork. So it's because I opened them up earlier. Let's reopen this. This will only take a second to do because I've got all the files.
So do we have this? Do we have this sort of prepped and ready to get back to where we were?
Yeah. No, this will be really quick. One of the things maybe you want to talk about is branches, because I should have picked this up already in Visual Studio, that when this finishes opening up, is I'm actually working in a feature branch. Well, GitHub in a second will pop up something down here indicating what branch I'm in. Oh, look, here we go. So I'm now in a feature branch. You want to talk about branching just briefly while I
Yeah, so really one of the things to look at is just things like git flow, or any, just read around branching strategies, because what we have in GitHub is you have the effectively your good branch where you release from is often called your main branch, your master branch, and you want to protect that. So you want to make sure that you're only putting code in there that's been verified. So what you do is you create branches where you can work locally, and so you create a branch off your main branch, make your changes, and then you can build that, and you can have your CI process run against that, and then you pull that into your main branch when you know the code is right, and then you delete that branch. It's just, keep used to, it's a very good practice to make small changes at a time, but each time you make a change, create a branch for it, do your changes, test them, merge the changes in, then get rid of that branch, and just keep so that you're regularly taking branches and they don't get stale.
Yep, awesome. All right, so in the background, it works. Look, so now we have, I know I've got a double S in there, there's a typo in the name here, but it's run my receive port analyzer and it's been successful. So we can now come out to the output folder, and we can find the one that we ran just now, which would be, what time is it now? 15:06, must be this one here. And we can look at the report, and hopefully now the report is going to look a little bit different. So if we go straight to the output, we can see that the SFTP receive location is 4 stars. Look at that.
Great.
And we open it up and we start getting more properties in here. Now we've got server port and username and private key and folder path and all the rest of it. Excellent. And then we've got a list of ones here that are not supported. Yeah. Now, there's a couple of issues with this. Private key password, it says it's not supported when it is. So we're going to want to play around with that a little bit. Proxy port, it says it's not supported. Well, that's correct, actually. SSH server host key is not supported. So we want to play around with those a little bit, but that shows you what you need to do. One of the things that I would go into the code here and change is there's some code down the bottom of the mapping stuff. I'm in the wrong rule here. I want my SFTP one, which is up here. And you can see I have definitely named that wrong. Very wrong. Obviously, I'll need to change that in dependency analyzer as well. But the one of the things is down here where I should just search and replace it, do all that. Down here where we do the conversion at the bottom, the FTP adapter had some code here for effectively making sure we never set the password in, we never copy the password from the binding file. It's not actually an issue because binding files don't export passwords, but if you had something that was sensitive like the private key, you wouldn't want that to come through. It's again not an issue with SFTP because in BizTalk we specify the file that the private key is in, but we don't have that in the MSI. So we have to leave it blank, and you'll have to manually go and set it. But one of the things we can do is I replaced this bit of code with one here. If I show the one I wrote the other day, is I did this. And what I've done here is I've said we'll look at the client authentication mode, and we will, if it's password, we'll make sure we've got a password set. If it's public key authentication, we'll make sure we've got the private key passphrase set. Otherwise, we'll output something saying it's unsupported. And by doing that, although I just had to come down to the stage runners here, and because I removed an S from here, and I need to come in and do it in here as well. In theory, if I build this again, and it successfully builds if I haven't missed a name change anywhere. You'll see it will slightly change the output. There we go, build succeeded. So I should be able to run this again. Cool. And now I'll have a new report. So what folder has that gone into? This one here, 104076. We'll open up this report. And what we should see here is something slightly different. Not hugely different, but we're going to see that the client authentication mode is in there, but the oh, that doesn't work. That hasn't changed at all. I spoke too soon. What have I opened up here? That didn't work. Why did that not work? I tested this yesterday, so it's definitely built. And what it's doing is it's outputting something saying that if the client authentication mode, which is public key authentication, it's going to add the passphrase, and it's going to say that that's a sensitive property. Let me just double check that report. I'm just going to run that again.
Nothing gave any error or anything like that, did it? It just
no,
seems
not
to
at
go
all.
through cleanly.
Yeah, I might have to just run back through this code here and double check. Oh, someone at my front door. So in here, oh, there we go. Now it's working. So I've got to remove this. That's right. I did have a bit of code I haven't put in. So what we've got now is a new message just saying that the private key passphrase is not copied because it's a sensitive value. Yeah, which is what we'd expect to see. And I also put a bit of code in further up. In fact, what I'll do is I will cheat and I'll go and open up this and replace the whole thing. Because what I did is I ended up adding a little bit of code up to here to remove the password and private key password properties as they've already been handled further down. So now if I was to run the tool and look at the report, cool. Now what we've got in here, you'll see that that private key password's disappeared from the list of non-supported properties, which is correct. So this is working exactly as I expect now. So there's no private passphrase set, there's no password output, and we get a warning just letting us, or informational thing telling us that we're not copying that value out across. And there we go, that's it. I think what we'll have to do is the next steps after updating the YAML file, that copies those properties into the ARM templates, and then also generating the ARM templates for the API connection and the SFTP receive adapter logic app. But now you can see we've successfully got the report to say that SFTP is now supported. So we're over halfway there.
So that is that's absolutely fantastic stuff, Dan, and thank you for demoing that. It's been you know, I hope everyone watching really appreciates that this is hard stuff that and Dan's explaining it really clearly and going through it, and we hope that, you know, we hope that you'll take this on, and all the people watching this can then pick a different adapter each, go through the same process, and then before you know it, we'll have all the adapters supported. And that will be and that would be a great place to be. I can imagine some of them aren't going to be quite as easy, but we'll see about that. You know, whoever wants to volunteer for the WCF ones, then fill your boots, because those are all going to need a little bit of thinking about, given the fact that Logic Apps doesn't support WCF.
Yes.
So
only a small thing, small issue.
only a small issue. But so Dan, let's just recap on what we've done then. So the thing is, we actually went to, you know, the Azure portal, and we've got all the information on the SFTP adapter in the Azure portal, so we can look at what the properties are. We also looked at the properties in BizTalk, and then we were able to create a mapping list between them. What we then also did was we got a rule. So we're doing the SFTP adapter, so we based it on the FTP adapter. We used that as a template, and then the main bit we had to change, apart from class names and adding it to the dependency injection, that sort of thing. But the main thing is that there's a bit in that just maps the properties of that effectively maps those transport specific properties. Maps a property bag of that onto the property bag in the that we're using on the target side, the Azure side, and and then the rest of the rule can tweak that and add messages and blank out data that's sensitive and all that sort of thing. But on the whole, that was there's a few fiddly points to that, but one of the things that I think one of the things that we'll do over time is just add this sort of stuff into the documentation, so that at least you know what the steps are that you can take, because each step in itself is quite easy. There's just the various touch points that we have to go through in a sequence to get to the end result. So that's been, well, I sincerely hope that you've really enjoyed that. Thank you very much to Dan for the content, and I think we can wrap up there. I think we're all exhausted now, and we've all got the we've all taken in a lot of detail in a very in a quite intense period of time. But next time round, we haven't actually had anything in the Q&A. I was going to say the Q&A is open. But we haven't had anything in the Q&A, so I think we can do that. We can do some more Q&A next time. But what we'll do next time, let's say we've done the analysis side of this, so up to the point of report so far. So what we need to do now is to say, okay, how do we take the SFTP adapter in the target model, and then make that into the support that in the SFTP adapter in Azure. So that's what we'll do next time.
Cool.
And so that can be harder or easier?
Different. Yeah, we'll be working in JSON. We'll be editing a YAML file using Liquid, and then we will be a whole session on creating a new logic app only in JSON. So
so if you like your Notepad++,
yes, exactly.
then
love this.
then you'll love this. But it's that's where we're going to get to next time. So thanks everyone for being with us today and watching this session. Really enjoyed presenting. I certainly enjoyed presenting. Dan's enjoyed presenting, and I think that Dan was just finishing off the presentation. So next year we'll be back. We will be back. This is the last one this year. It's been quite a year. What we'll do back is next year we'll probably go monthly on these, and we'll just focus on just continuing to just think of it as a free training course that you can pop into once a month next year, and we'll just impart the latest information as we are going and migrating clients and running this tool. We're going to be learning stuff about it, and so we'll let you know all the latest stuff that we've learned that we can then pass on to you. So thanks everyone for attending, and it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from Dan. Right.
Cheers, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas.
Yes.
We wish you a very prosperous and virus-free 2021. All right. Bye now.